Dom here from Essential RC. Thanks for tuning in. If there's one thing I've really enjoyed doing on the Essential RC YouTube channel in recent years, it has been the projects where we have converted fixed wing radio control aircraft to FPV. Now, what do I mean by that? FPV is all about where you wear goggles, and through those goggles you are seeing the in-cockpit view from a camera that you have put inside the aeroplane. So what you're seeing here is my view, my FPV view from inside a Hobby King Spitfire. So this is about a 1.6 meter radio controlled Spitfire, and off my right wing there's another Spitfire, actually a flight line Spitfire being flown by James. And what we're trying to do is fly in close formation, which is not as easy as it sounds, I have to say. It does take some practice. So setting up a model to fly FPV, it's not as difficult as you might think. You have to have a gimbal and a couple of servos if you're going to want to move the camera, as I'm doing here. You don't even have to use head tracking. You could use a couple of sliders on either side of your transmitter to control those servos in the gimbal so that you can pan and tilt. But if you do use head tracking, it does give you that real full immersion in the flight experience, as if you are sitting in the cockpit. And flying a Spitfire, it doesn't get any better than that when you're flying a warbird, and particularly if you can fly in formation with something that is similar, or the similar size or the same as the Spitfire that James is flying here. We had a huge amount of fun doing this. Not a very hard conversion to do at all. The Avios Spitfire from Hobby King has a lot of space inside it if you take out the pilot and the seat inside it. The Flightline Spitfire is a bit more cramped inside, a little bit more difficult to do, but it can be done. Now, the gimbal I use is from Painless 360. It's 3D printed, and then I'm using the DJI digital FPV system, which is and initially it's quite a big investment, but you can reuse the air units, the cameras in all the different aircraft that you might want to convert to FPV. Now, the most difficult bit of a flight is the landing, I'd have to say. This is one of my more successful landings, but the whole flight is really enjoyable. Now, going on from warbirds like the Spitfire, we have also converted EDF jets. No better jet to convert than the Freewing Avanti, which I've had several of these and had a lot of fun flying them line of sight. But as I convert more and more aircraft to FPV, I'm actually beginning to enjoy FPV flying of these jets and airplanes more than I am line of sight flying, because I feel as though I am actually flying the plane. So again, not a difficult conversion to do. With this one particularly, to get the clear view, I had to get rid of the transparent canopy plastic so that it was totally unobstructed, so you don't get any reflections from that canopy glass, and it's not obscured in any way. And you can see actually there I'm using a little LCD screen from rcgauges.com, which kind of worked okay, kind of a flickering effect because of the mismatch in the frame rate of the goggles and the display, but it still worked fairly well, although I now prefer the on-screen display telemetry that you get in the goggles, the FPV goggles these days, and there's no lag in the information that you get. But it, again, in terms of high-speed flying, doesn't get any better than flying something like this, and it's not a hard conversion to do. After converting an EDF jet like the Avanti to FPV, you might be wondering where you go next. And this might seem crazy, but the direction I was headed, I converted my ultra flash turbine powered sport jet to FPV. Now in this particular example, I did not fly FPV. I basically gave somebody else a passenger flight. So I was flying the jet line of sight, and they were wearing the FPV goggles and getting the benefit of the FPV view. But as you can see here, I captured the telemetry data, altitude and speed onto an SD card via a Maytech flight controller, so that I could put those graphics on the screen and show the speed and the altitude on top of the video. So this was quite an amazing view, and turned out a lot better than I expected. Still some reflections from the glass canopy, despite it being very clear and high quality plastic, but I could imagine in the near future I'm gonna be able to fly a turbine jet FPV. It should be possible, but of course there's a lot more safety concerns around flying something like a turbine jet FPV, and I would only want to do that if I had a buddy box system in place. So if something went wrong, if I lost the FPV view suddenly, then somebody else could take control of the flight by using a buddy box. But you can see here on this flight, my speed varied between 40 and 247 miles an hour at its top speed, and I'm using a huge amount of space. So flying at this particular club, I do stay within the bounds of this model flying club, but it's a very fast turbine jet being powered by a Swiwin turbine jet, but an amazing flight experience if I was to be able to fly FPV, and that is my aim with a jet next year. Certainly. So flying it line of sight, as I said, but I know Dave, who was wearing the FPV goggles, really did enjoy that flight experience. Now, because I was capturing the telemetry data on an SD card via a Maytech flight controller, I could also actually capture the coordinates, the GPS coordinates. So you can see here, this is a Google Earth presentation of my flight, which was quite interesting, because then I could actually see how I had flown in relation to the limitations of the flying site. And because I do care when I fly at different locations that I am flying safely and not out. It would be very easy when flying FPV to go further than I should be, but in this case this Google Earth view showed that I stayed within my limits. There are so many different fixed wing aircraft that could be converted to FPV, and this is probably the example that I've flown the most. This is an FMS Fox 3-meter powered glider that Jason designed a tail mounted pan tilt gimbal for, where the DJI camera is mounted high up on the vertical stabilizer, so that I can get this really nice view across the forward fuselage and the wings, and to have in the foreground while you get the beautiful countryside in the background. It's such a nice view to get, and such a relaxing way to fly. Again, what I have in this is a Maytech flight controller, which enables me to capture all this telemetry, so that I can present that as graphics on the video afterwards. But I've had, I think, over 50 flights on this particular setup. It's probably been my most successful FPV project to date, and the one that's the most relaxing, the most enjoyable to fly, the most consistent in terms of performance. All the other aircraft, if they have retractable landing gear, then there's always a risk that you might not nail the landing. So with a belly landing with a glider like this, you can't actually go wrong really. So that's why it has lasted so long. So here, climbing to height about 1,500 feet, which we can do at our particular club, and just cruising around and on a nice summer's day and doing really slow, gentle aerobatics. It just doesn't get any more relaxing.
6 foot, 4 foot, 3 foot, 2 foot, 1 foot, down. Look at that. Oh, brilliant! How was it, Dom? With your slightly sketchy looking face?
That was absolutely fantastic.
Of course, FPV conversions don't have to be limited to aircraft. And this is one really interesting project that I did early on, and this was converting a radio controlled electric motorbike to FPV. This isn't made anymore, unfortunately, not supplied anymore by Hobby King, but I put an analog FPV system in this electric bike, and you can see the onboard view here. It's fixed, not head tracked view, but still really fun. And driving a motor electric bike like this is particularly difficult, so I was very fortunate that Martin, who has a lot of experience of driving bikes, I went to a club in Crystal Palace, and they let me let Martin drive this on the track with a couple of other bikes that you saw just overtake there, and he did it with my FPV system on board, and we got some really good footage. I couldn't drive it myself, but it did, doing that for the first time has made me consider other surface FPV projects I could do, and this is the next one I'm going to do. So this is an Armour Limitless, which is looks like a kind of an F1 car, but this is my next project that I'm going to be working on. They say this can get up to 200 miles an hour, so I'm working with model shop leads who are going to be putting this together for me, and then I'm going to be putting a head tracked FPV system in this and taking it down to our local track. So thanks for tuning in to this video where I've covered some of the FPV projects we've done in recent years and cluing you up to what we are going to be doing next in FPV terms. Beyond doing an FPV conversion of this Limitless RC car, I want to be looking at maybe converting an RC helicopter, a scale helicopter, maybe even a boat in the not too distant future. But thanks again for tuning in. You may want to subscribe if you're interested in our videos and watching them. If you do, then please click the bell icon for notifications, and please give us a thumbs up as well on our videos. It really helps. Thanks for watching. See you next time.